Welcome to Fantasia, home of the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys a brand new deck profile, and this time it's gonna be on Altergeist. Now, this is a deck that I've been playing on stream for a couple of months now, but I've never really made an official deck profile for. So, without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. So, starting off, we're playing some Altergeist monsters. I know, right? Big surprise. So, we are playing 3 copies of Altergeist Meluseek, 3 copies of Altergeist Liquidus, 3 copies of Altergeist Marionetter, and also 2 copies of Altergeist Conquery. So the reason why I play these cards in this ratio is because of the fact that Meluseek is a searcher for the deck. So if it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can go ahead and search out your other Altergeist monsters. Typically you're going to search for something like Marionetter, because Marionetter is pretty good. When you normal summon her, you can set a Altergeist trap directly from your deck to your side of the field. So it can't even get Ash Blossomed, which is a fantastic effect. Now, Liquidus, typically people like to play 2. I like to play 3 because of the fact that you need to see Altergeist monsters. We do not have access to Multi-Faker just yet. That's in Flames of Destruction. So in the next set, then we might be able to adjust our ratios for it, but you want to see Liquidus. It just puts a body on your side of the field so that you can use the effect of things like your Conquery and the effects of your trap cards and things like your Altergeist Protocol. So, Conquery says that if you have a Altergeist card on your side of the field, doesn't have to be a monster, it can be like one of the trap cards and things like that. If your opponent declares an attack, you can just negate the attack and then special summon this card. And then you can, if this card special summon, you can negate like a card on your opponent's side of the field, which is pretty nice. The cool thing is that Conquery and Liquidus work really well together. So if you like negate an attack and you special summon Conquery while your Liquidus is on the field, Liquidus can just bounce the Conquery back to your hand, and then you can return something your opponent controls back to their hand. And then if they declare another attack, you just special summon this again. So it's a fairly good little loop to protect yourself from battle, especially because all of your monsters here are pretty weak. But yeah, that does it for the Altergeist monsters. Next off, we're just going to go into the Windwitch engine that we play. Okay, so the Windwitch engine is fairly standard. It's just 3 copies of Windwitch Ice Bell, 2 copies of Windwitch Glass Bell, and then 1 copy of Windwitch Snowbell. Now, the reason why I played the Windwitch engine in this deck is because of the fact that we don't have too many power plays and too many ways to get board presence onto our side of the field, mostly because all of our Altergeist monsters here are fairly weak, and we are only limited to 1 summon per turn. So that's why it's very difficult for us to build and maintain board presence. And with the help of your Windwitches, you can easily make something like a Crystal Wing, which helps take the pressure off of you trying to get rid of like really big monsters on your opponent's side of the field. And it also acts as an additional negation for you because, you know, Crystal Wing can just negate monster effects. So that's why the Windwitch engine is here. I don't think Altergeist can be like really good pure as of right now in the TCG because the fact that we don't have Multi-Faker and we don't have ways to make really consistent power plays. But once Multi-Faker comes out, definitely just replace this with like Multi-Faker and some additional traps. So yeah, that does it for the Windwitch engine. Next off, we're just going to go into some of the hand traps that we play. For me, I'm just playing 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. You can play like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring if you would like to. You don't really need Effect Veilers in this deck because of the fact that Ghost Ogre removes the monsters from the opponent's side of the field. And you typically prefer that over just negating your opponent's stuff. Because the fact that we're playing Crystal Wing, we have Altergeist Protocol, which we'll get into when we get to the traps, and you have like the Solemn Brigade and things like that. It's fairly easy for you to negate effects, but Ghost Ogre takes bodies off of the field, which is something that this deck actually really likes. Okay, so yeah, that does it for the monsters. So next off, going into the spell cards, we have a very, very standard lineup of 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, 1 copy of 1-for-1, 1 copy of Monster Reborn, and then 1 copy of Raigeki. I don't play a lot of spell cards. Cosmic Cyclones are here because if you ever face like magicians and stuff where their pendulum scales get really annoying and they can potentially like use purple poison things to out your floodgates and whatnot, this just gets rid of them permanently, takes them out of circulation and all that. 1-for-1's a great way to access Meluseek because it's a level 1 monster. And it's another way to put more bodies on the field, which is always really nice because of the fact that, you know, you're only limited to 1 normal summon per turn, and most of your Altergeist monsters don't really have any other ways to get into circulation aside from just, you know, you normal summoning it, or in this case, you can use 1-for-1. Monster Reborn, same reasoning as the reason why I play like 1-for-1. You just want more bodies on your side of the field, and this can also bring back things like your Crystal Wing from your graveyard, so it's actually pretty nice for like recovery plays. And then Raigeki is because we have a difficult time getting over like larger monsters, so you just want to have some access to a board wipe in your deck. This can also act as like bait for negations and things like that as well. So yeah, that's basically it for the spell cards. Next off, we're going to go into the trap cards that we play. Okay, so for the trap cards, starting off, we're playing some of the Altergeist ones. So 3 copies of Altergeist Protocol. Now this card is fantastic. It's a continuous trap card for the Altergeist archetype, so you can set it with your Marionetter directly from your deck to your side of the field. And the activation and effects of your Altergeist cards activate on your side of the field cannot be negated. So basically, if your opponent has skill drains, if your opponent has strikes or anything like that, they just can't negate your Altergeist effects. It like protects you from Veiler and things like that as well. Now, Protocol is amazing because of the fact that it also doubles as like effect negation. So you can basically just send another Altergeist card from your side of the field to the graveyard to just negate the activation of a monster effect and destroy it. And you don't even have to send a monster with this. You can actually send other things as well, although typically you are going to be sending something like Meluseek in order to negate your opponent's effects. And then when Meluseek is sent to the graveyard, you can always use Meluseek's effect, search out things like Conquery so that you can, protect yourself during the battle phase, because you already control Protocol on your side of the field, making it live. Alright, so the next card that we play is going to be 3 copies of Altergeist Manifestation. This is a card that was recently released for the archetype in the TCG, and this is like a monster reborn for the archetype. So basically, you just flip this card, and then you target one of your Altergeist monsters in the graveyard, and you have to special summon it to your side of the field. The cool thing with this is that with Siliquidus, what you can do is you can activate this, if you have Siliquidus on the field, to target like a monster in your graveyard, and then Siliquidus can target Manifestation, bounce it back to your hand, and you'll still get the reborn effect. Although I think there is some discrepancy in the TCG about like the way this card was printed and worded in here, so it might not be like, some judges might rule against it or something like that, but that's how it's meant to be played. That's the interaction that was meant to happen, and it's the way that's ruled in the OCG. So hopefully TCG fixes that or whatever. They might take their sweet time with it, but just keep that in mind if you are taking this to an event or anything, that it might not work. Alright, so next off, we're playing 2 copies of Personal Spoofing. Now this is an Altergeist support card, but it doesn't have Altergeist in the name, which sucks because you can't just set this to your side of the field with your Marionetter. But Personal Spoofing is great because once per turn you can basically just shuffle one other Altergeist card from your hand or your field into the deck, and then you can search out any other Altergeist card monster that you would like. So essentially what you're doing is you're getting rid of dead copies of like Protocol, or if you have too many manifestations, you don't want that many because you don't have that many monsters in the graveyard. Just shuffle it in, and you can get like copies of your Marionetter. You can get copies of Siliquidus, Conquery, all that good stuff, right? So this is basically just here for consistency. Some people like to play 3. I don't really like 3 because this card's dead in your hand if you draw multiples, because it can't shuffle itself back into the deck, which is a pretty big downside. But oh well, right? At least they have some form of consistency for the deck. Okay, so next off, we're going to go into the Solemn Brigade. Should be pretty standard. The last few traps that we run, so 3 copies of Solemn Strike, 1 copy of Solemn Warning, and 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. And the last card that I play is going to be 1 copy of Imperial Order. So the reason why I play the Solemn Brigade is just it puts additional negations on your side of the field, so you're not completely reliant on the effect of your Altergeist Protocol, because people are going to be trying to get rid of this card like as soon as possible. They're going to, Twin Twister, Cosmic Cycle, MST, anything they can do, Purple Poison, to get rid of this thing, and this thing is so good for you. You just don't want to always put yourself in a vulnerable position where this thing can get destroyed. And so, if you're negating an effect of your opponent's monster, and your opponent, let's say, has Ghost Ogre and trying to destroy this, you have strikes that can technically protect this card and help you out there. So yeah, Imperial Order is pretty self-explanatory. We don't play that many spells in the deck, and actually because of the fact that we run this, so I'm not running Spellbook Engines, Dualities, and all that good stuff. Imperial Order is just here to shut down your opponent's spell cards, make sure that they cannot have spell and trap removal, to go ahead and destroy your Protocol. But yeah, anyway, that does it for the trap cards. That does it for the main deck. So next off, we're going to go into the extra deck. Okay, so for the Link monsters, we're starting off with 1 copy of Link Kuriboh. So Link Kuriboh in this deck is really good because of the fact that you can easily trigger Meluseek at any time that you please. If you just normal summon Meluseek on your first turn, go ahead and make Link Kuriboh. Not only can this negate an attack, but then it triggers your Meluseek in the graveyard because it's sent from the field to the grave. and it's just a really consistent way of getting your searches off without having to wait for like more monsters on the field to make higher link monsters, essentially. So yeah, next off we're playing 2 copies of Altergeist Hexia. This is like the boss monster of the Altergeist archetype. Now I know they have like Prime Banshee or whatever, but it really doesn't do anything, and it has too steep of a investment because you need 3 Altergeist monsters essentially. But what you can do is you can just easily use 2 Altergeist monsters to make the Hexia. Hexia gains attack of the monster that it points to, an Altergeist monster points to. So it's 1500 attack. If you have something like a Marionetter that's like right under it, this thing actually goes up to 3100 attack, so it's actually pretty beefy, and you can attack over a bunch of larger monsters. And Hexia can help you negate like spell and trap effects as well. So this is really useful if you have protocol on your side of the field as well, because what you can do is you can just tribute the monster that this points to and just negate your opponent's spell and trap cards. Typically going to be like, you know, power plays and power cards like desires and things like that, but it can also negate you know, Mystical Space Typhoon, Cosmic Cyclones, all that good stuff that are trying to destroy your protocol. So that's why 2 copies of Hexia is good enough. I really, like, 3 never really comes up. You almost never tap into this extra deck, actually. So yeah, going into the other Link monsters that we play, playing 1 copy of Underclock Taker. It's like a toolbox option that you can go for. Really doesn't come up, but then if you need the arrows, you know, it's available to you. We have 1 copy of Akashic Magician. Akashic Magician is pretty decent, although, again, it doesn't really ever come up because the fact that, you know, you're playing Altergeist Hexia, and Hexia is probably the one that you're trying to go for. And Hexia benefits from other Altergeists being in play with it, so you're rarely ever going to go into these. But Akashic is here for the toolbox if you ever need to bounce something that your opponent has that's above an extra monster zone. So there is that, and it's non-targeting removal, so it's pretty decent. This requires just 2 monsters with like the same type, and because Windwitches are also spellcasters, same with all the Altergeist cards, this is actually pretty decent to make, pretty easy to make, I should say. We're also playing 1 copy of Decode Talker. Now, Decode Talker is just, if you want to upgrade like your Hexia, it really doesn't come up at all. But if you do want to, you can make your Decode Talker protect your cards from targeting effects, which is kind of nice because it can protect your protocol. And then we're playing 1 copy of Borreload Dragon. Borreload Dragon's here mostly because, like, if you ever like come into a situation where you have too many monsters on your side of the field, you can go for the Borreload, but at that point you're probably more likely to not already winning the game if you have that many resources. So this is just here just in case. Okay, so that does it for the Link monsters. Again, you're basically never going to be summoning any of them except Hexia and like your Link Karibo. So that does it for the Link monsters. Next off, we're going to go into some of the XYZs. Now, these cards don't matter at all whatsoever, so we're playing 1 copy of Baguska, 1 copy of Tornado Dragon, and we're playing the Utopia package of Utopia Lightning. So these cards never come up. You're almost never going to make them. If you are going to be playing some for rank 4, I'd recommend the Utopia package, because this can come up sometimes, especially with like Monster Reborn being able to get you like another level 4 if you need to, and this just helps you swing for like the extra damage that you might need, because Meluseek's going to be poking your opponent for a lot of damage throughout the course of the duel, and this can just be a pretty big game ender, and it's also a pretty big beat stick, so it helps you attack over things that you probably normally wouldn't be able to get rid of. But yeah, that's basically it for the XYZs. You can just replace the Tornado Dragon and Baguska depending on, you know, what type of build you're playing. And the last 4 cards are going to be the Synchros that we use for our Windwitches. So 1 copy of Winterbell, 1 copy of Clearwing. We're playing 1 copy of Crystal Wing, and then 1 copy of Stardust Dragon. So the reason why I have like 2 level 7s and 2 of the 8s is because it gives you some options and flexibility, because really these are like the only ones that you're ever going to summon outside of the Hexia and the Link Karibo. The Winterbell is here, you know, for you to easily climb into Crystal Wing. Clearwing's here because the fact that, you know, if you do have another like tuner on your side of the field that you just want to go ahead and try to make synchros with, you can make Clearwing if you don't have the means to go into Crystal Wing. And then Stardust Dragon's here, like for games 2 and 3, if your opponent's trying to side in like more destruction, board wipes and back row wipes and things like that, you can just Stardust instead of going for your Crystal Wing first turn, and this can protect all of your back row, which is pretty nice. So yeah, that's basically it for the extra deck. Again, you're not really going to be summoning too many of these cards, but you just want to play them so you don't look like a scrub at locals. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Altergeist content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.